We close out the week talking about the opportunity that the quarterbacks will have at training camp coming up at the end of the month. That plus more on Friday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast for July 5th, 2024.
You are Locked On Raiders, your daily Las Vegas Raiders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen of the day. Make sure you subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast to get the latest edition of the show as soon as it becomes available. And as always, if you're checking us out on YouTube, you know we appreciate that. The show continues to grow each and every day, and that's because of you and because of my man Ari. Ari does a great job each and every day, even on holidays, to make sure we're up on YouTube looking good and sounding good, and we definitely shout him out. We appreciate him. He's on Twitter at Ari Produces. You can hit me up on Twitter as well, as many of you do, at your boy Q254. And we got the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. And after a day away from calls and texts, we will get back to that coming up in segment number 3. Got a lot of great feedback when it comes to quarterbacks, when it comes to the national perception of the Raiders, as we're a couple weeks away from the start of training camp. It's getting closer and closer and closer, getting really excited about that. So your feedback, your calls and texts will come up in segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Segment number 2, we'll get some thoughts on the quarterback position. We started talking about that on Wednesday's show before we took a day away to celebrate the life and times of Al Davis on his what would have been 95th birthday, and obviously Independence Day as well, 4th of July. So we'll get back to the conversations about Aidan O'Connell and Gardner Minshew and really start talking about the opportunity that they'll have to prove who they are coming up at the end of the month at training camp. So that'll all be in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Here in segment number 1, just some news and notes. And again, coming back from the 4th of July holiday, hopefully everyone had a very good, fun, safe time. Hopefully everyone realizes, again, I like to reiterate it as much as possible, what the meaning of the day was, why we were celebrating 4th of July, why we were able to see our fireworks, why we were able to hang out with our friends and family and throw some meat on the grill, have a good time. A lot of us had the day off on the 4th of July, which was awesome. It's kind of cool to go on a vacation for, a good week and a half or so and then come back and have another day off, right? It's kind of cool. So I'm not going to complain about it. And again, hopefully everyone was able to enjoy themselves, have a really good time, maybe get a little rest and relaxation before the big grind comes up. And we are a few weeks away from the big grind when it comes to at least my line of work, when training camp opens up with the veterans on the 23rd and the rookies starting on the 21st. Again, that'll be at the end of the month. But as we celebrated Al Davis with a really good conversation with John Kingdon, that I did that interview back in 2019. And it's funny, I always, feel some kind of way because I know that there's some dated stuff in there. It's not all 100% accurate as far as coaches, quarterbacks, so on and so forth. But, man, listening back to that, I always kind of put up a smile on my face when I just listen to what he has to say when he's telling the stories of Al Davis. So it was kind of cool to have that, be able to do that each and every year. I like to run that back just as, paying homage to Al Davis. Well, of course, the Raiders did the same thing, tweeted out. Their social media team did a really good job of, always remembering Al Davis all day long on the 4th of July. And I found this to be pretty interesting, some really good audio from Al about his vision on how he was trying to build a team and what he wanted when he visualized the Raiders. Check it out.
As a young guy, I had a dream that someday I would build the finest organization in professional sports. I had total confidence, not arrogance, confidence, that wherever I went, I could build the finest organization. The dream was to have the greatest players, the greatest coaches, play in the greatest games, and of course, have the best records. That was my dream, and I felt I could do it. There are several characteristics of the team: fear, the intimidation, the mystique about it, the quick strike, the touchdowns, the great games we've played in, the fact that off the field, we are mavericks. We want to dominate the environment rather than just be a part of the environment. I didn't care as much about being respected as I cared from the standpoint of winning about being feared and being imitated. And then respect could come after that. I think that all the players who've passed through our locker rooms, who've worn the silver and black, are guys that we love. They're always welcome back. The door is always open because they've worn that uniform, and I feel that we've shared in their glory and we perpetuate it, but yet when we talk about the past, we talk about the greatness of the Raiders, and so I feel that we have a debt to them. And I, for one, will never forget that debt. The perpetuation of the greatness of the Raiders, to take a professional football team and give it a distinct characteristic that's different from all others.
So really good stuff right there. You know, anytime you can hear Al Davis and his thoughts and his vision and what he was thinking when he was trying to put together the great Raider teams that he was able to put together, and just the way that it was being described, not to mention what John Kingdom was describing when he was talking about Al Davis's visions and how he was putting together those teams. And, you know, he's talking about having the best players, having the best coaches, right? Going out there and they don't have to respect them, but they're going to respect them at the end of the day after they go out there and win some games. And, you know, I start fast forward and thinking about what Antonio Pierce is trying to do, attempting to do. And that is exactly what he's trying to do. And I think that that's why, for me at least, I know that's why I was such a big fan of John Gruden, because I always felt like he was trying to build teams like Al Davis built the team. Like, I always felt like he had young Al Davis mentality to him, right? Even when he was signed as a coach the very first time, before he came back the second time, just had that Al Davis in him. So he was always trying to build a team in what, you know, Al Davis would have loved. And I feel like that's what Antonio Pierce, modern day, is trying to do right now. Of course, it's easy to say it. It's not easy to do it, right? You got to go out there and do it. Plus, all these teams and all these players around the league are so stinking good, so much more advanced, you know, so much bigger, faster, stronger. I mean, we get it. We know how it is. Every year you're seeing bigger, faster, stronger dudes enter the league. But just being around the team, being able to be at rookie minicamp, being at OTAs, mandatory minicamp, you know, anticipating training camp at the end of the month, and obviously what I was able to see up close and personal from AP and the coaching staff last year when he took over on November 1st, it just feels like he's so trying to build that bully, build that team that Al Davis would be so proud of, that team that, you know, resembles the old school Raiders, the ones that would go in and you knew that you were in for a fight for 4 quarters, right? There was no going to be taking plays off or taking a quarter off because, well, the Raiders aren't very good. They're going to make you earn it. And that's what I feel like Antonio Pierce is really trying to do. He's trying to really deep dive into what Al Davis would have done as he's trying to build the team. And, you know, I'm excited. I'm fired up about it. I've told everyone that, you know, I try to temper my expectations right now. You know, when you get too excited about something, you start to hyperventilate. Like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to get so excited about training camp and the upcoming season when we're still a few weeks out, right? I don't want to start getting excited until we're actually out there and we're seeing practices go on, and then we're seeing them in preseason games, and then we're seeing them at SoFi Stadium that first game of the season against the Chargers. Like, that's when I really want to get fired up and pumped up, but it's really hard to not get pumped up when you realize and you're starting to see everything evolve and you realize how good this team really could be. Right. And they can. And I've said it so many times. And I know that, you know, all the national media might not be giving the Raiders all the flowers that we think that they should be getting, but they're going to learn pretty quick. Right. If the Raiders go out there and they play like I think that they're going to play, and they have that style and that, you know, that image of the Al Davis teams, the great Al Davis teams that basically didn't take what you gave them. They took what they want. They're going to start talking about the Raiders quick, fast, and in a hurry. But again, again, don't want to get too far ahead of myself, right? It's early July, right? They haven't even got to training camp yet. So they've got to go out there and earn it. But they have the opportunity. They have the people in place, right? I believe this coaching staff is really good. I believe this team could be really good. But they've got to put in the work. They've got to go make it happen. But just thought that I'd share that sound from Al, and just kind of, you know, when I hear that and listen to it, and I remember sitting at my kitchen table listening to it on the 4th of July, and I'm thinking, that's what AP is trying to do. That's AP's vision right there, is to build a team like the late, great Al Davis would really be proud of. And that's what he's attempting to do. And I really am hoping that it's very successful. And, man, if it is, boy, it could be a really fun season for the Silver and Black, and, of course, a really fun season for Raider Nation. But one of the big keys to that success for this team in 2024 is going to be what? The quarterback play. Aidan O'Connell, Gardner, Minshew. It wasn't really my fault that the conversation popped back up, but it has popped back up. So it's actually really good timing. There's some really good stuff to talk about when it comes to O'Connell and Minshew, and really O'Connell in particular, and the opportunity he's going to have starting in training camp at the end of the month. We'll talk about that coming up in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. We'll get right to that after I tell you about eBay Motors. With passion, drive, and patience, that is the formula for winning championships. It's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers to roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. It doesn't matter if you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money is back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the price you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guarantee Fit only available to U.S. customers. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Want to continue with the quarterback conversation that we really got started on the podcast on Wednesday, and it wasn't because I just want to deep dive into the quarterback conversation. We know what it is, right? I know a lot of folks nationally are starting to talk about the quarterback competition. There's no competition right now, right? It's early July. There's no activities going on. Everyone's on break. Aidan O'Connell, I'm seeing him around town at the Aces game. Gardner Minshew, he's doing Gardner Minshew things. Like, I don't, I haven't seen him in a minute, but there's no competition right now. The competition won't start till the end of the month when the Raiders are at training camp. But because of different, outlets, like Matt Miller, I mentioned it on Wednesday's show. Matt Miller from ESPN was already putting out his 2025 mock draft, and he had the Raiders taking Shedeur Sanders at number 2 overall, trading up from number 8. So I was like, wow, we are really far ahead of the draft when we haven't even started talking about training camp yet in 2024. But I get it. You got to feed the beast, and that's what you got to do. So the conversation has come about, and that's okay. I don't mind, I'm not trying to run away from the conversation. We know what it is. For the Raiders in 2024, it's either Aidan O'Connell or Gardner Minshew. And if the team is going to be good, which I anticipate them being good, I said 9-10 wins, and maybe they could do a little bit better if they get on a little bit of a roll. But I feel like they're in that 9 or 10 win window. But it's going to be one of those two guys or a combination of the both that are going to get it done. They've got to have some good, consistent quarterback play. I've said it many times. I feel like we all know who Gardner Minshew is, right? He's a really good insurance policy. He's a guy that's proven he can go out there and win games if need be. I don't think he's the end-all, be-all. I don't think he's a long-term solution. He hasn't been a long-term solution anywhere he's been in the league, whether it's Jacksonville, Philadelphia, Indianapolis, or now with the Raiders. He hasn't been that guy. Could he potentially be a Rich Gannon-like guy that was a journeyman, then all of a sudden found a home for a few years and turned into a league MVP? Sure, it's possible. Do I think it's going to happen? No. I just think he's a really good insurance policy. But the jury is still out on Aidan O'Connell. We really don't know what his ceiling is yet. And what he dealt with last year was a lot of chaos and still showed and proved that he can win some games. Am I saying that he's going to be a league MVP? No. He might not even be a franchise quarterback either, but I feel like at least the jury is still out on Aidan O'Connell. You don't know what he's going to be. So that's another reason why I feel like he's the leader in the clubhouse to be the starting quarterback for the Raiders in 2024. But I found this to be very interesting. Amber Thea-Harris, who's one, a really good friend, two, fantastic NFL mind. She has a show on SiriusXM Radio, and she was with Brian Hoyer. She had Brian Hoyer as her co-host. And, of course, Brian Hoyer was the backup quarterback for the Raiders in 2023. He was also the guy that I said should start that Chicago Bears game. He did start that Bears game. It didn't go so good. But this conversation that he had with Amber Thea-Harris about Aidan O'Connell went really well. I thought this was some really good, informative information about Aidan O'Connell. So here's Amber Thea-Harris and Brian Hoyer from SiriusXM Radio talking about the Raiders quarterback, Aidan O'Connell.
What do you think of that battle and what you saw from Aidan O'Connell at the end of last year when he was given an opportunity?
Yeah, I mean, being there firsthand and watching Aidan grow, I remember him saying at the end of the year, I never thought this is how this year would play out. Obviously, Jimmy Garoppolo was the opening day starter, and then by the end of the year, Aidan was playing. And at the beginning of the year, he was third on the depth chart, and then he ended up finishing the entire year. And I thought, to see his growth and what he was able to do as a fourth-round pick was tremendous. So maybe I'm a little bit biased, but I was actually kind of shocked that they didn't even look at possibly retaining Bo Hardigree, because when Bo took over, as offensive coordinator middle of the year, it took a while, but things really started to pick up. Obviously, we had the big game against the Chargers and then finished the year on a strong note. And there's some great skill players there. I love the addition of Brock Bowers at tight end. You pair him with Michael Mayer, who was a rookie last year who was really coming into his own at the end of the year. They added Trey Tucker last year, who was a great rookie, and you pair those guys with obviously Devontae Adams, who's one of the top receivers, and then Jacoby Myers, a guy that I've been with, his entire career, seeing him grow into the player that he is. And I think he really benefited being around Devontae last year. Devontae drew a lot of coverage, and Jacoby became a primary target, and he got to see what a top receiver looks like day in and day out, and really raised his level. So maybe I'm biased, but I think, what Aidan did last year, I know he hasn't shown it as much as Gardner Minshew has throughout his career, but I know the guys really gravitated to the way Aidan took over and his leadership as a young player.
So Brian Hoyer might not have done a lot on the field for the Raiders in 2023. We know this, right? I'll never live it down that I said that he should go and start that Chicago Bears game, and Raider Nation is not going to let me live it down. And that's okay. I'll take that one. That's fine, right? He proved that he probably shouldn't be playing anymore. But what he just said right there about, watching and observing and seeing how Aidan O'Connell took it on the chin and was able to really battle through all the adversity and all the chaos that he had to deal with that rookie year. I mean, think about this. The guy was a 4th-round pick, and I remember when he was drafted, I said, yeah, he's probably going to be a backup at best. I said that. I had no problem saying that and was thinking that it would be best case scenario that he never sees the field his rookie year. Well, he saw the field early. He saw the field often, right? Obviously, we all know the chaos that, evolved and ended up happening where he ended up on the field. And then Antonio Pierce named him the starting quarterback on November 1st, and he played the rest of the season. So, I mean, he dealt with a lot, dealt with having, an offensive coordinator that had never called plays before. And you even heard Brian Hoyer talking about he was actually surprised that they didn't keep Bo Hardegree around because at some point they did figure it out. But now he's got Luke Getsy as the offensive coordinator, a guy who's a veteran as far as being an OC, a guy that's called plays plenty of times in the league, so he knows what he's supposed to be doing. The jury's out on Luke Getsy as well if he's going to be able to push all the right buttons, but at least he's been there, done that before. It's better than when he took over the job in Chicago because he had never called plays before he got to Chicago. Now at least he's got that under his belt, so he's got some experience there. But it's funny. It's kind of listening to that. It sparked a conversation on my radio show, Unnecessary Roughness, on Raider Nation Radio 920 on Wednesday. Kind of looking at what you need to see from these guys, either Minshew or O'Connell, to prove that they're the franchise quarterback. And some people believe that there's nothing that these guys could do to prove that they're the franchise quarterback. They just ain't it. But again, I feel like that's the case with Minshew, but not really the case with O'Connell, just because you saw what he was able to do. You saw how he was able to adapt. And the one thing I know about Aidan O'Connell that I can really respect, and all real good quarterbacks in the league need to have it's between the ears. It's not necessarily what they're doing with their arm. It's not necessarily their mobility. It's really what they could do between the ears, right? What they have. Can they figure it out? Are they smart enough to put the team in the right position, right? Are they smart enough to be able to read a defense and say, okay, this is not going to be there, or this is going to set my player up for failure. I need to check out into this place. This is why, right? If they can figure out the between the ears part of the game, then the physical part of the game they should be able to figure out. And obviously the one big question mark when it comes to Aidan O'Connell, it's not can he deliver the ball down the field. I think he could do that fine. He's accurate enough for me. I'm good with that. The one big question with him is going to be, can he move around the pocket? That's the bottom line, right? And I've talked about it till I'm blue in the face about needing a quarterback that can move around, needing a guy that can escape the pocket, pick up a first down or two when it's there, right? Keep plays alive. I've talked about that. That's just not something that you all of a sudden learn how to do if that's just not in you. So I want to see my biggest question mark when it comes to Aidan O'Connell, and can he or can he not be the franchise quarterback long-term for the Silver and Black? How can he manipulate the pocket? How can he keep plays alive? He's not going to be a guy that's going to take off and be fleet-footed. He's just not. Anyone who thinks, well, he can work on that, you just don't work on those kind of things. It's either in you or it's not. It's either instincts or it's not, right? And you can work on anything that you want to work on in practice, but when something is live, when the game is going, when there's guys on the other team that are trying to take your head off, you know what you do? You revert back to what you know, right? I mean, it's easy to practice something and really work on it in practice when you have the red jersey on and nobody's trying to clean your clock. But when it's going up against the Chargers, when you're going up against the Ravens, when you're going up against, the Carolina Panthers, when you're going up against insert any team on the Raiders schedule, right? When you're doing that, you don't have time to try to think about, okay, well, in practice, I was doing this and this. No, you just go back to what you know. Instincts kick in. That's why it's so hard to teach a guy to be mobile or teach a guy to be able to manipulate the pocket, move around the pocket, keep plays alive. Either he's got it in his bag or he doesn't. So for me, one of the big interesting things that I'll see in training camp, and that'll be a big focus, and you won't see it in training camp, but, it's something that you'll probably see a little bit of in preseason, is going to be how can he keep plays alive in the pocket. The one thing I will be able to see in training camp, and this is something I saw a lot in mandatory minicamp, was you'll see how long he's got the ball in his hand and if it would be a sack or wouldn't be a sack, right? There's multiple times in mandatory minicamp where me, Paul Gutierrez, and Vinny would be sitting next to each other in the bleachers. We'd be watching a play and say, that's a sack. That's a sack. That'd be a sack. That'd be a sack. Like you see Max Crosby go back there and tag him or be right there so he can hit him, but obviously they're not going to do it. Those are the moments that I'll say, okay, he's got to be able to find a way to get out of that situation. And that's where Minshew probably has the upper hand on him because he can do that. No, he's not, some Jalen Hurts type guy. He's not Lamar Jackson. Like he's not going to run around and, or Anthony Richardson, who he was backing up last year. He's not going to be that guy, but he has a little bit of wiggle to him where he can get out of there. That's where Minshew has the advantage over O'Connell. If O'Connell could figure out how to work that pocket in his favor and be able to thrive without being a mobile guy, then he can definitely be that franchise quarterback. That's going to be one of his biggest challenges. But I thought that was some really good audio that I wanted to bring to the table. Again, Amber Theo-Harris, who is fantastic, right? She does a lot of work with the Raiders, Silver and Black Production, NFL Network. She's been on the NFL Network. She was on the NFL Network for a long time, Sirius XM Radio. Great football knowledge right there. And so her hosting that show and having Brian Hoyer on there and break that down, talking about O'Connell, I thought was a must to bring to the podcast. So hopefully you enjoyed that as well. I know you got a lot of feedback on the quarterback position and more. 707-654-4693. Your calls and texts are coming up next in segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Before we get to that, though, I do want to let you know that today's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast is also being brought to you today by BetterHelp. And I just got back about a week ago from a very much needed mind-clearing and calming vacation. I really had nothing to think about except for what the next activity was going to be, where we were going to go, what time I need to be ready by, and what we were going to eat afterwards. And that was really it. It gave me a chance to get a great reset. Well, everyone doesn't always have that opportunity to take a reset, or maybe sometimes it's not time to take that reset, right? I mean, sometimes situations occur before you have that opportunity to take a break. And so you've got to make some quick decisions. You've got to make some life-changing decisions. And there's opportunities in front of you that you are really kind of pondering back and forth. Well, BetterHelp can come into play right there where they can help you out. They offer opportunities at therapy that best fits you. They're entirely online. They're convenient and able to be flexible to fit your schedule. You fill out a quick questionnaire, you get matched up with a licensed therapist, and if need be, you switch therapists at any time with no additional charge. You could talk with someone that has no agenda on your life. So you don't have to compare your life to anyone else. You can start focusing on your life with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOn today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, BetterHelp.com/LockedOn. Here we go, Raider Nation, segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Your calls and texts straight off that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line as we close out the week really strong, 707-654-4693. We'll start things off with a call from Jay in the 209. He's calling to talk about the anticipation he has for this year's Raiders team and why. He breaks it down here. Here is Jay in the 209.
Yo, what's up, Q? It's Jay in the 209. What's up, man? I've been listening to your podcast for a minute now. Love it. I'm going to be honest, bro. Like, you said something the other day. It kind of, tripped me out a little bit. I did a little stint at K-Win as myself back in 91. And I just appreciate the fact that you came through the same area I was through. So, but anyways, I watch your podcast every day. And I'm going to be honest with you, man. The fact that the national media does not understand what we have going for us, the fact that Travis Kelce is talking about, they got their asses beat by the Raiders on Christmas Day. That's all a result of the new head coach we got, man, and I'm excited about it. I can't wait to see the product that he puts together in his first season as a head coach. I can't believe that we're in a position right now with like a new head coach in L.A. Who's very well known, Jim Harbaugh. He's very well known. He's going to come in and probably make a difference on that team. But we have a coach, too, that's going to make a difference on our team. Andy Reid Yeah, he's the guy. He's the guy that everybody can't beat except for us lately. And then, you got Denver and, whatever. But here's the thing, man. I'm excited more so this year than any other year that I've been a Raider fan, and I've been a Raider fan. My first game I saw was like in 1980 that I remember as a kid. And that was the year we went to the Super Bowl. And I remember 2 Super Bowls that we won, one that we lost. I'm not saying that's where we're going today or this year or whatever, but what I am saying is that I'm excited for our team. We have, I think, good leadership, and I think that's always where it starts. You can't put a team on the field without good leadership, and our team is going to move forward with Antonio Pierce as the head coach. He's put some great assistants around him.
Jay, thanks for the call. Appreciate you, my man. And that's awesome. You were a K-Win guy too, right? Who would have thunk it? K-Win, that spot in Stockton. That was the first on-air opportunity that I got. Thanks to my guy, Victor, Big Daddy Zaragoza. He made the call, put his confidence in me, and they got me the job there in Stockton. I was doing some overnights there, midnight to 6 a.m. And I'll tell you what, it was the best midnight to 6 a.m. show you ever heard. You probably didn't hear it because it was midnight to 6 a.m., but it's all good. As far as the Raiders go, man, there is a lot of reason to be excited about this team, right? I've said it earlier. It's a few weeks away from the start of training camp. I know I'm pumped. I'm in can't wait mode because I want to just see what it looks like. But I'm also at the same time trying to chill and temper my expectations. I don't want to get too fired up, too excited, right? I just want to see how it all unfolds. And it will sooner rather than later, man. We'll be talking about, hey, here's day 1 of training camp, or day 2, or here's Antonio Pierce talking, or here's Devontae Adams. Like, sooner rather than later, we'll be in the mix. We'll be talking about a football season. We'll be talking about the Raiders going to Minnesota for preseason game number 1, going to Allegiant Stadium for preseason game number 2 against the Cowboys, and then closing out the preseason against the 49ers for game number 3. Like, that's all going to be in the mix sooner rather than later. You'll look up and be like, dang, that went by really, really quickly. So we got a couple more weeks before that happens, but please believe he'll be here soon, and I'm with you, pretty pumped up about the team, anticipating what they could be in 2024. Up next, got a text from Ant Dog in the ATL. It says, hey, Q, it's your boy Ant Dog, Raider from the ATL. Welcome back from a well-deserved vacation. I'm chilling and I'm grilling, listening to the interview with John Kingdon talking about the late, great Godfather, Al Davis. Great interview. One thing that really stuck out to me is when he spoke about great Raiders teams of the past and the keys that made them successful. He mentioned size, speed, toughness, and pride. Being a longtime Raiders fan since the 80s, I concur with those keys. What AP has done is bring toughness and pride back to the silver and black. If that translates to wins is yet to be seen, but it gives us hopes as fans. Can't wait for the season to start. Keep doing what you do. Raiders. That's from Ant Dog in the ATL. And exactly, I was saying the same thing in segment number 1. Right, listening to the Kingdon interview, which I do every year, listen to it again, even though I recorded it with them back in 2019, right, kind of know exactly what it is, but listening to it back, it's like, man, yeah, okay, and you can see the vision of AP, and I think you said it perfectly. I talked about it earlier, but I like what you said. He brought back the toughness and pride. He has absolutely done that. Now, they've got to translate that into wins. I think that was a perfect way to word it, my man. Thanks so much for that text. I do appreciate you. Up next, got a call from Raider Doug in the 509. He's calling to talk about the way the Raiders have been ranked like 9th or so when it comes to their defense. Here he is. He's a pretty fired up Raider Doug.
Thank you. It's Raider Doug from the 509. Yeah, I'm getting a little bit tired of this NFL and their ranking of a number 9 defense. You know, it doesn't even make sense to me. You got a defensive player from game 2 last year that played on one leg. We're talking one leg. One leg for 16 more games after that, 17, 15 games, whatever you add it up to, however you want to look at it, with the bye and all that. So we got that going on, and then we had some help to them. And then, yes, we have quarterback controversy or challenge or however you want to word that. And we got the cornerback challenge there for who's going to play on the other side of Jack Jones. But aside from that, we had the number 1 defense leading out of last year with AP as coach, and we had a one-legged man playing. And he was better than 30 other defensive ends in the league. The only other 2 is a dog out of Cleveland and a dog out of Pittsburgh. Other than that, there was nobody that touched him. So I don't see where the NFL gets their thing. This year he's playing on two legs, and that's Mad Max Crosby, and he's going to be kicking some butt and taking some names, and I just don't get it. I mean, I've been a Raiders fan since 1969, and I've seen the Immaculate Reception, the Holy Roller, and a bunch of the other ones, that Tuck Rule, and you name it, and it's just getting sick and tired of the NFL just disrespecting the Raiders. I'd call them a few names, but they got their heads up there where the sun don't shine, so it really doesn't make any sense to do that. All I got to say is go Raiders, and you know what? Just keep overlooking us, because we're going to come take some names this year. Thank you. Have a good day.
Raider Doug, thanks for the call. Appreciate the passion as well, my man. And that's the key. It's okay for the league to overlook the Raiders. That's fine. That's what they want. They're okay with that. AP said that last year when he was the interim coach. That's fine, right? They ain't got to respect us, but they will, right? They ain't got to like us, but they'll respect us. They'll respect them when they see what they're doing, right? And he doesn't mind them overlooking them, because just like the Chiefs, when they got punched in the mouth on Christmas morning and didn't see it coming, like Travis Kelce said, they went into their house and beat their backside, beat their tail, and you can hear it pained him to even admit that. And the fact that AP had them to the position where he felt like they were going to fight him on the field, like that was eye-opening. Obviously, it worked out really well for the Chiefs. It opened up their eyes so well they went on to a run and win the Super Bowl, but they punched them in the mouth. They never saw it coming. The Raiders are okay with punching teams in the mouth and letting them find out the hard way. Mess around and find out. I'm trying to think of the clean way to put it, right? Mess around and find out. That's what they're trying to do. So I think that'll be okay, and just give them reason to get fired up, just like you were fired up on the call. Definitely appreciate that. Up next, got a text from Mark H. in Philly. He said, what's up, Q? I hear a lot of people saying the Raiders won most of their games at the end of the year due to the opposition having backup quarterbacks besides the Chiefs, and that's the main reason they can't totally trust O'Connell, but fail to mention that he was a third-string quarterback himself. I believe that should strengthen his stance as a starter, because all those teams were playing against a backup third string also. What's your take? Thanks. That's Mark H. from Philly, G-Town. And Mark, thanks for the text. I appreciate you. And look, the fact that Aidan O'Connell was a rookie tells you all you need to know, right? He went in there. He had no idea. When he was named starter, week 9, week 10, that was the first week 10 he had ever experienced in the NFL, right? I mean, everything. So, when he lost that game coming out of the bye week, it was 3-0 to Minnesota, and then they played the Chargers 4 days later. Guess what? That was the first short week he had ever experienced as a starting quarterback in the National Football League, right? I mean, everything that Aidan O'Connell did his rookie year was his first time, right? His first time being a starter was after he was named the starter November 1st. Yeah, I know he got that start early in the season when Jimmy G went down, but, I mean, he was the starting quarterback, named the starting quarterback when AP took over. So I don't care who he was playing against. Everything was new for him. Oh, not to mention he had a head coach that had never been a head coach in the National Football League. Oh, not to mention he had an offensive coordinator that had never called plays in the National Football League. Like, I mean, everything was new. They were trying to figure it out on the fly, and that's not easy, right? I'm a guy that's lived a lot of my life trying to figure out things on the fly, and it ain't easy. Matter of fact, it's stressful at times, right? So can you imagine trying to all of a sudden be a fourth-round pick, quarterback, third-string guy, as you mentioned, and then all of a sudden being thrust into the starting role and trying to figure out everything on the fly. And, oh, by the way, your head coach and your offensive coordinator are trying to do the same thing. Yeah, I hear all those same things that you're hearing, but I ain't tripping on them. And I know that Aidan O'Connell's not tripping on them either, because he had to adapt to some very tough situations. Thanks so much for that text, though. Really good stuff. I do appreciate you. Got time for a couple quick ones. Mike in San Jose, he's up next. He's calling to ask about my thoughts on Dak Prescott and why I don't want the Raiders to sign him. Here he is, Mike in San Jose.
Hey, what's up, Q? This is Mike. I'm calling from San Jose, where it's 100 degrees. Probably shouldn't complain because it's probably worse over there in Vegas. Anyways, I'm in the middle of your podcast for today, and you mentioned this is during the segment with the phone call about Dak Prescott. And you mentioned that you said for some dumb if for some dumb reason the Cowboys don't sign him. And I'm just curious why you say if for some dumb reason, if you're also on board with not wanting to sign Dak because he's too expensive and he's not necessarily elite. Would it be dumb for the Cowboys to not want to sign him to a $60 million contract with with other quarterback options out there? I'm just curious if you go ahead and give me a call back or respond to my call. Anyways, have a good one, Q. Later.
Mike, thanks for the call, and that's really a good question, Really, I'm glad you picked up on that. That's a really good question. I think Dak Prescott makes sense for the Cowboys. So when I say that they would be silly not to re-sign him, that's because what do they have behind him? Right? I mean, they don't have anything. They have Trey Lance behind him, who they didn't pick up his fifth-year option, so he's going to be a free agent. They have Cooper Rush behind him. Do they think that those two guys are the guy? No. So I think for them, it makes sense to re-sign him. And I think that they've already invested so much in him, and they know what he can do. He's their homegrown guy. So for all that, yeah, it makes sense for the Cowboys to re-sign him. I don't think it makes sense for the Raiders to go out and dish out $60 million a year and then compromise what their team could look like. Right now, Aidan O'Connell is on a rookie deal, fourth-round pick rookie deal. If the Raiders go into the draft and get a quarterback, he'll be on a rookie deal. That rookie quarterback deal is an NFL team's best friend. So for me and my money, like if I was the Atlanta Falcons, I wouldn't have signed Kirk Cousins to a free agent deal. And then you see what they did. They turned around and drafted a quarterback anyway. Like I wouldn't have done that. I wouldn't have spent that kind of money on Kirk Cousins because, one, he hasn't won anything. I mean, he hasn't won anything, right? I mean, he's won in the game of life when it comes to getting the bag. He's made a whole lot of money in his career, right? Even Minnesota said, okay, yeah, thanks, but no thanks, right? And they had already given him a ton of money. They were ready to move on. So I think for the Cowboys and Dak, I think that makes sense, right? He's got his brand there. Him and Jerry are tight. Like everything makes sense for them to hold on to him and let him be their quarterback. And they'll figure out their financial situations. That's not for me to worry about. But for me and my money, I just think that it doesn't make sense for the Raiders to go out and invest that kind of money because you're going to compromise the team somewhere. I love the way the team is made up. I love the fact that the defense got a bunch of bloodthirsty Pirates on it, right? And I don't mind them getting money, and I'm hoping more guys on the defense get money, like a Malcolm Kuntz, right? Or a Nate Hobbs, or a Jack Jones eventually, right? I hope all these guys get some money and stick around and really keep this team where they are and can continue to grow. And, you know, I like what they've got going on the offensive side of things. They've just obviously got to figure out the quarterback position. But I think it was a very good question. I'm glad you picked up, and I'm glad you asked the question. It was very valid. So thanks so much for that, Mike. I do appreciate you. We'll close out with a text from Southern Indiana Raider. He says, hey, Q, Southern Indiana Raider here. Just listen to the latest podcast. I've got a couple things to comment on. First, I will table my malcontent and doubts on the offense for now. Second, I wanted to say on the Dak idea, flat out no. I don't hate Dak, but he's been on a loaded team and hasn't delivered anything in the playoffs. Definitely not a $60 million player. Good to have you back, my man. Keep up the great work. That's Southern Indiana Raider. Thanks so much for the text. And, yeah, I think you just summed it up perfectly as far as my concern with Dak as well. You know, if he was a guy that I thought was elite, I would say, okay, he'd be worth it for a couple years, whatever. But my definition of elite is not the same definition of other people's elite, and that's okay. It doesn't have to be. I just don't think that he's a guy that a team should sign. That's a team sign him as a free agent outside of his own team for that kind of money. Let his team sign him for $60 million. I'd rather the Raiders go and find their guy throughout the course of the draft. But thanks so much for that text. I do appreciate you. That's going to do it for today's show. Off to Texas, going to go play in my man John McClain's softball tournament that he's going to have at Baylor Saturday morning. I'm excited about that. So me and the wife are taking a quick trip to Texas and back, and we'll be back here on the podcast on Monday. Ryan Hogue, the former Raider wide receiver back in 2003. He was drafted Mr. Irrelevant. I had him on my radio show on Wednesday. Really good stuff. I was just going to bring a couple little sound bites to today's show, but then I realized listening back how good that interview was. So I'm going to run that back on Monday. So you'll hear that conversation talking about training camp, talking about quarterbacks, talking about wide receivers, expectations, all that good stuff from Mr. Irrelevant, who's not irrelevant. He's a good dude. Ryan Hogue, former Raider wide receiver, 2003 is when he was drafted. You'll hear that conversation, and we'll have some news and notes, whatever I can collect over the weekend, probably some stories from Texas as well, and hopefully everyone has a fantastic weekend. So until Monday, Raider Nation, take care of yourself, take care of your family, love on your family. As always, just win, baby.